Hello, everyone. Welcome to Make Your Software Sing, Tech for the Choral Classroom. My name is Jeremy Little. I teach in suburban Chicago at a high school called Vernon Hills High School. And I'm here today to bring you into my classroom a little bit to show you some of the things that I do to help my students read music, interact with music, practice better. A lot of these different things really foster independence on the part of my students, and I do this through a lot of tech tools. So let's just jump right in, shall we? All right. So who am I? I'm just some dude. I am a dad of two lovely kids, two teenagers. I'm a husband, a music educator, a pretty bad golfer, and I love national parks. My teaching philosophy is to really give students a great, rich, and deep musical experience. And I want to do that through a lot of different means. I've been teaching for 19 years, the last 15 at Vernon Hills High School, and then before that, Milwaukee Lutheran, so public high school and a private high school. I am on the comprehensive musicianship through performance team in Illinois, a great project full of rich and deep teaching. I teach 3 levels of choir and 1 section of educational life skills, which is a special education class, production and performance class through that. My tech background is pretty middle of the road. I would not say I'm incredibly tech savvy, but I'm also skilled in a few different tech apps and tools, and they're becoming easier and better as I do them. In COVID, I went into overdrive like we all did who had to kind of pivot to remote learning, and it really pushed my skills to the limit. On this side of COVID now, I am coming and back and kind of realizing these are the tools that I really want to focus on with my students, and these other things I just kind of use to get through, and I was put to the side. So my teaching philosophy is really centered around what are the teaching outcomes that I want to have for my students. Okay, whether they are skill in the performing or listening, whether they're skill outcomes, knowledge outcomes about the piece of music, or affective domain outcomes in terms of what I want my students to become and the people that I want them to be through music. So skill, knowledge, and affective. Where I choose to use tech, music tech, a lot is in the strategies and assessment portions of this. So different tech tools can be a strategy toward a bigger outcome, or they can be used in a strategy, and then I can really assess my students' skill, or I can assess their knowledge of a piece of music in different ways through these tech outcomes, but it's always geared toward the greater outcome, whatever I'm thinking of, in either a greater skill outcome, a greater knowledge outcome, or a greater affective domain thinking outcome. I never use tech just to use it, if that makes sense. Actually, I did that before in my career a lot, and it was very hit and miss, and my students, I would come back and from a conference, and I would do something that I found, and it was really great. And my students would be like, yeah, you just came back from a conference, didn't you? You know, you're so excited about this thing. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them. I just wanted to use it. As I've grown over the years, my tech use has been much more focused toward greater outcomes. So let me share with you what a few of those things are. I'm a big proponent in music literacy and being able to understand and listen for and be a critical thinker of different music. So I used to have a 3-ring binder full of all these worksheets for listening exercises and commenting and journaling. I moved toward a kind of a more bound portfolio version that had a more rigid kind of curriculum. And then over the years, as tech apps, especially the music first software, has come into play, I have really, really, really taken a hold of this and gone to everything to cloud-based software. So I love it. And let me tell you a couple of the benefits why. For cloud-based software, such as Music First, right? My students can access it anywhere at any time. Really, really important to be able to do that. If there's no excuses, some students are absent, some students are in a voice lesson, some students were on vacation or sick, or in COVID they were out for 5 to 10 days, right? Everything that we do in the classroom, they can do at home on their one-to-one device. It is on their phone, it can be on their Chromebook, iPad, and that is a real blessing because there's really no excuses. It's very intuitive to use, it's not clunky, and it's the medium in which our students operate. Okay, so that's one thing. Next, when I do grading or feedback directly to the students, I can do it through Google Classroom. If I assign things and then make the comments right through Google Classroom, or through the Music First Classroom, I can give them comments and feedback directly through there. And it can be done anywhere. I used to have these big, thick portfolios that they would have to write in, and I'd have to lug around these big suitcases full of these things, right? I don't have to do that anymore. I used to do singing assessments, which I'll show you in a little bit. I used to have personal digital voice recorders. Now kids can take their phone, right? They can sing into their phone. I'll show you how we're going to do that in a second, and upload it through Google Classroom and using the Practice First app. And we can do all that, and then I can grade it right through Music First Classroom, which is absolutely lovely. And I can tailor things to individual students. So if certain students are lagging behind a little bit, or they need extra help, I can say to them, hey, I'm going to assign you these other things, or let's practice these other things right through here, right in the Music First app. And I don't have to create like separate worksheets for them. I can just show them where to find it in the app and work with them directly. If it's with Focus on Sound, which will go in a little bit, or Musician, or some other apps. There's such a menu of apps. So I love how I can tailor things individually to students' needs. Likewise, I have some students that are like high flyers that are like, hey, yep, I show them some stuff and they've got it really quickly. And what's the next thing, Mr. Little? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I can say, all right, here, let's go to this level. Let's go to this level. Let's go to this level. And so it really runs the gamut when I can have cloud-based software and I can tailor things to individual students' needs. I cannot tell you how important that is to keep all kids motivated and growth mindset oriented as we go through. So in this next little bit, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of software that I use a lot and show you what we do. Okay, so the first piece of software I want to introduce to you is Sight Reading Factory. Love this for my students, both on a classroom basis and an individual basis. I usually start out with classroom using only rhythms, a great way to introduce music reading software. You can teach Takadimi or numbers system, any type of system that you like. I usually teach a short writing in the numbers system, but then I quickly transition to neutral syllables so my students don't get bogged down in the writing and they really get a lot of reps performing the actual music. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm here in my Music First Classroom. I go to my software tab and I click Sight Reading Factory. It opens up and you can see a lot of the recent practice or things that we have done. So I will go to just to click a new one in here. My favorites, rhythm only. I can choose to a number of different levels and a number of different time signatures because there's rhythm. That's all we do. And so we're going to go down here then. Different modes, testing the skills, or free play. Usually for classroom, we do free play. It will give me a rhythm. In class, I will have my whole students read this rhythm. I can have it on a number of different ways. They can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. They can do do, 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 do. They can do it on do, do, do. We have a lot of variations that we just do a little bit of these rhythms every day. I can have the metronome to help me out. I can have them play and sing with the rhythm. So it'll give me the tempo. Do, 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 do. I can have them do that. It's awesome. Since I make it a part of my warm-ups, we can do the full class, different sections. I can number off 1, 2, 1, 2, and then they can, group 1 does it, group 2, or pairs of 1s, pairs of 2s. If your birthday is from January through June, you do this line. If your birthday is from July through December, you do this line. Section show-offs, you always have a couple kids that want to do it, and the other kids can really encourage them. They can stand up or kind of do it in partners or pairs. You can up the tempo, you can up the difficulty. Great variety of things to do in class. I have this document that I'll link here to you to show you, but this is just a number of other strategies for a conference that I did a long time ago, but just want to kind of give you a couple of other different things. You can, the teacher, I can clap one measure and I can clap one measure wrong, and the students can identify that. I can clap a measure or a line and have them repeat, depending on how quick or advanced your students are. We can do all sorts of different, put your feet on the eighth notes and put your hands on the quarter notes if you want to do it at a more basic level. And we can make games out of this as well. So that's just something else for you. All right, when we do more than just rhythm with pitch, in the classroom we can do unison, 2 to 4 part. We can isolate different things like dynamics, balance within the sections. I can say we're only going to do this one time through and then go to a brand new one time through. And so I'll show you how we kind of do that. So if I'm here, I don't go to rhythm only. This is my sight reading factory. Let's see, I have an SATB choir. I can go, I'll show you kind of how that works. An ensemble, a choir, multi-part. Let's say it's at level 3 this time, and we can add voices, soprano, alto, tenor in whatever clef you want, and then bass. All right, and give them a time signature and give them a key signature. Let's just say we're going to do random C major. Okay, so this is a lovely example of all the things that you can do in here. And I can toggle on solfege. I can move different pitch names or scale degree names. I say, hey, you know what? We don't want to use annotations, and I only want 4 measures for this. So I'll load a new measure, and then look, here we go, only 4 measures. So many different things that we can do. I can have expressive listeners. I can have some people come up and say, how well did your section do at sight reading? They can give feedback to the class. Again, section show-offs, and they can read it for candy if I got some Jolly Ranchers. It's a wonderful thing to show off to the principal as we're kind of sight reading, like, hey, look, we've never seen this piece of music before as a class. Let's read this, guys. And maybe you want to have the principal read it. So we have do, they can read this here. Like, look, we have these letters. Or we have these solfege syllables, and then we're going to take them out and impress him again or her again. So love doing that. When we do individuals procedure for Sight Reading Factory, I have a little procedure here that actually I'll show you this. We can make individual lines too, so just a soprano line like I was practicing here before. And so we have an individual line exactly the same way. I can have students practice on this and then do another one at the exact same level. Love the fact that they can do tons of different things at the exact same level. I have an individual procedure here that I like to use with my students. Again, this will be linked at the end. But kind of down here, where's that? Right in here. This, I'd say, get comfortable being awkward with sight singing. So you have a growth mindset procedure. You find the time signature, the tonic, and the tempo. And then when I do quizzes, I either give them 4 scores, 100, 75, 50, or 100. And you can see there, you've performed this exercise perfectly, or you've made 15 attempts. If they've made 15 attempts at it, and I can see that through the recording when I assign it through Music First Classroom, I will give them 100% because I love the growth mindset. This is a hard skill for some kids. So that is Sight Reading Factory. Okay, for practice first, I can use this for a variety of things. First, I can use it for warm-ups if I just want to do something as simple as a warm-up, or I can use it for unison art songs if I'm teaching that to a whole class, which I often do at the beginning of the year, especially for my treble and beginning groups. And then I can use it also for assessment for SATB songs that I'm rehearsing throughout the year. Let me show you how I do that. First, I go through Music First Classroom and software to Practice First, and I open up Practice First. Okay, I take my content here. I can go through a number of different things. I can go to choral vocal warm-ups, like I said. There's vocal solos, which we'll get to in a second, or choral repertoire. If there is not a song on here that you want, you can actually create your own exercise. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit when we talk about Soundtrap. But let's say I want to go to vocal solos. Awesome. So the 24 Italian art songs are already loaded on here. Amazing content library through Music First Classroom. And we're going to be working on Vittoria Vittoria. So I would just click on that. And here it is. When I give students a song to practice through Practice First, they enter the song and it looks like this. They can have a number of different options. They can toggle the tempo and change it. So if they want to practice it a little slower, they can. They can choose to have different things follow them. The background of the track, an accompaniment, or just nothing, right? As they practice it, they can hear the song to just kind of get it in their head. So they can do that, but then they can also sing the song and receive feedback. Here's a little bit how that works. Vittoria, 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 mio cuore, non lagrimar più, e sciolta d'amore la vil servitù, Vittoria, Vittoria, mio cuore. So then it gives me a pitch score. Now the pitch is a little tight in there, but I tell my students, do not worry so much about the pitch. Try to worry about that rhythm. If I would have done the whole thing, I would have gotten a better score for length. And it gives me some feedback, right? Then, I can also do that a number of different times. If I don't like it, I can kind of do it again. And either submit it to the teacher. If I'm a student, I submit it to the teacher, or I just try again. If I want to use this procedure a lot, I usually tell my students to really focus on listening and evaluating their own sound versus just focusing in so much on the visual and feedback that that the Practice First software tends to give. It's a good feedback, but it's not the only feedback. And so I really focus on this, and I'll show you that in a second. I want to share with you the choral library of Practice First, which is really great in a number of ways. One, they have a lot of great built-in pieces, but then you can also add to it. So let's see, I'm here in the choral repertoire section of Practice First here, and there are preloaded pieces that they have, public domain, motets and madrigals, and from different publishers, which is really awesome. So let's say I want to do a choral ensemble piece. Let's say I want to do the Adoramus Te by Palestrina. I can click on that, and you see here, it just gives me one line, but I can see every line, see what this is. I can hear it, play it, and then I can assign different lines to different sections of the class. They can practice those lines on their own and then listen to them, that same feedback that I showed you earlier, that visual feedback as well as the oral feedback that they have. They can practice it again and again and then submit the assignment when they are ready. When they do that, when they submit it to me, I use a singing assessment Google Doc that I'll show you here. And this was an old student, Emma, that created this. So I have this Google Doc that they fill out as well. I give them questions, and then they fill it in. I have a rating scale that we have, from 0 to 8. We have a word bank about tone quality, and then they describe their tone quality in the passage. When they highlight words that they had, and they describe it, she says, I think the best way to describe my tone quality is rich. There were some notes that sounded forced, etc., etc. And she goes back and forth and describes to me about her tone quality. This is her listening to her sound. And then at the very end, I just give a little comments for singing a low part. You did a great job. It was open and well placed. And I gave them a number. So she gave herself a 5. I gave her a 7. And then we move on. If this is overwhelming to your students, through practice first, you can just say, I'm just going to listen to tone quality, and I'm just going to listen to breath energy, or I'm just going to listen to pitch or rhythm. And we don't have to talk about all the different things. But this particular class was a advanced class, and so we did this kind of work maybe 3 or 4 times a year, once per concert cycle, something like that these students would have. And I would be able to do this through practice first, which is awesome. Okay, so that is the primary way that I use practice first to do warm-up assessment and singing assessment, both in rehearsal and for practice. Remember when I talked about strategies and assessment, an easy strategy to just keep practicing, and then a more formal assessment of their learning. And when I listen to them, I can give them tips, and I can plan rehearsals later based on the feedback that I get. All right, the third major piece of software that I use in the year is called Soundtrap. Right, many of us might have become familiar with it during the pandemic. I certainly was, and I got pretty decent at using it. Post-pandemic, I use it specifically for 2 major things, either kind of sectional rehearsals that I want to send my students off in a different room, and I can have the accompaniment or the vocal line isolated for their part, and they can kind of rehearse on their own. Or I have a special solo and ensemble project where kids get into smaller groups and kind of teach themselves some of the music. And I put everything into Soundtrap. Therefore, they can use Soundtrap to have the accompaniment, to have their vocal parts, and in like live in-person rehearsal. And then as a part of their rehearsal, they use Soundtrap to record their vocal line into Soundtrap. And then at the end, we have 2 kind of performances, the live in-person performance and then the digital recording as well. So let me show you how I do that. First, let's take a piece of music that is not currently in Practice First or anywhere. I have to go out and find it. So I'm using MuseScore here, and I searched for Carol of the Bells in MuseScore. You can isolate by genre or ensemble, etc., etc., and I found a Carol of the Bells here. That looks like this. I can then download it. Right? I can see if I like it, play throughout the whole thing. This one is edited very nicely. You can follow different people who edit things very well and see what other choral scores they have if you want to use some. It has a very nice search engine. There's a lot of stuff on here in the public domain. And I can then download it, and downloading it will then, I'll open up into MuseScore, and it will look like this. So when I open it in MuseScore, it looks like this. It is a music editing software. This is free to download, by the way. That's why I love it. This score is nicely edited, but if there were editing mistakes or things that I wanted to change or I wanted to do it differently, especially if it's public domain, I can add, modify different things. I could change lyrics. I could change tempi for that. I can do all sorts of different things and editing that from there. Once I am finished my editing and I can play it back and see all the lines, here's how I do it. It's a pretty simple process. I go to File, Parts. I create parts for all of this, and I say OK. It creates parts for me, C, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And then what I do is I export those parts, not as the full score, but as individual parts. And I export them as MP3 audio, right? So it's pretty cool. Once I export those parts as MP3 audio, I can take those files and then dump them into Soundtrap. And here's where the magic happens. I love how it works, because then students can manipulate all those different things for whatever rehearsal purposes it suits them for. All right, so I have those parts exported. Watch how easy this is. Does not take a lot of time at all, and that's why I love it. I'm in my music first classroom. I go to Soundtrap. I open it up. I have created just an empty Carol of the Bells, empty project to kind of do, right? So it loads these project, and then I can take my I can import files to do like that. Or the nice and easy thing that I'll do is actually just take them from my desktop, right? And kind of click them in and go, boom, I want to have them right into here, right? Once they are all in, just like that, now check it out. If I play this, there you go. I can then teach students to toggle on or off a section, rehearse only the bass line, rehearse only the alto line, and then students will add a new track and add their voice underneath here. So they can add voice and microphones and start recording and add their part right underneath here. If it had an accompaniment, they can only have the accompaniment. And sometimes I'll even have students have like a model voice part that I'll put in. When we do festivals, I usually, with our sending middle schools, I'll usually send out these as practice tracks, and I'll usually have a couple of my like advanced students record their part and then send this to the sending middle school student feeder programs, and then they will have practice tracks and sample audio to be able to play for their students so they can practice that as well. I absolutely love how flexible Soundtrap is. Then my students will create a recording and it'll sound a little bit like this. So I can go and kind of, here was what we did for solo and ensemble last year. So let's see this one. Here's the Boatman Stomp. So we'll enter this one and see this room and see what it sounds like after students have done it. So you can see here, these were the tracks that I kind of put in, these ones up at the top, and Annette and Jessica and Annika, they did all their stuff here. So I can turn on the student parts and let you hear a little bit of what they are doing, right? So we'll kind of start it and let you hear it.
Oh, the oyster boat, she keeps to shore, the fishing smack and venture more. The schooner sails before the wind, the steamboat leaves the wide track open. Hi-ho, the boatmen row, floating down the river of the Ohio.
So you can see how it's not perfect, but that's not the skill here. The skill isn't perfect editing and everything. The skill is to be able to rehearse this live, rehearse it on your own, and have those two marry. And that's what I love about Soundtrap for Education, is that we can marry these two things and have the software augment the choral rehearsal, and we get the best of both worlds. The kids learn how to use a digital audio workstation and they get better at rehearsal. I mean, isn't that great? So that's how I use Soundtrap in my classroom, both for solo and ensemble, like the small project. And then the other thing that I do is we have a team member, like my students, just this is a little aside, but my students practice each week, and then they fill out these little things. So we have a Google form, and this is not specifically Music First Classroom. This is just an easy Google form, but this is how they, after each week, what part are you going to rehearse next week? Use music vocabulary, what's hardest about this song, and what's going well. Oh, it looked like in this group, Cassidy was a very good leader. And so then we can go on the next week and the next week, et cetera, right? So that's how we use Soundtrap in our choral classroom. All right, so those were three pieces of software that I use pretty regularly throughout the year. Here's another three pieces that I use a little bit more intermittently. One, Musician. Love this app to be able to t- give to students to work in class. I will say for musician actually and for focus on sound, I will either use little homework assignments that I can kind of give individually for them to do. Or if I just want them to work in class, I'll say tenors and basses, I'm going to work with you right here around the piano. Sopranos and altos, I'm going to give you an assignment and you can go out in the hall or in kind of a practice room somewhere around the room, and you can do this for the next 20 minutes. You can do this activity. Some of them require headphones in order to be able to listen to things or tap rhythms or just know more about what key signatures are or some music theory concept. Those two are lovely to be able to do as part of like embedded in your daily rehearsal. I also use music for scanning scores and being able to assign them to be able to listen to music and scan it on their own, and or to scan it and then I assign it and they can play the part. It works lovely for them to be able to like hear new pieces of music and to see the music visually. All right, so that brings us to the end. If you liked what you saw here, you can email me. You can see more about how I use technology through teaching plans on the Comprehensive Musicianship Through Performance website at ilcmp.org. Or you can scan the QR code and receive a free trial of Music First Classroom. There are tons more apps on the Music First Classroom than the ones I showed you today. And you can really pick and choose for your students. So just remember that all of these tech tools are amazing when they are put in their, kind of great pedagogical place. If you have great outcomes, teaching outcomes for your students, skill and knowledge and affective domain teaching outcomes, and then you use this great tech to support the teaching as a strategy to support those assessments, that's where the real power comes from. I cannot highly recommend enough these great apps that are through here, and I hope you've enjoyed it today. So thanks very much.